magnetic field in it, which allows the banks to read the checks. So the challenge was traditionally checks were printed using offset. And what would happen is you would make a plate, and usually it used to be a polymer plate and so on. And then you had to set mechanical numbering machines to number the checks as well. That was a process, and as everybody knows, plate making, there's cost involved to that with that. And if you're producing only let's say 10 checks, those are going to be really expensive. If you're printing 1,000 checks, it's okay because cost of the plate is now spread over the number of checks you're printing. So the challenge was that the check printing industry in the US was declining rapidly, and we needed to figure out how to print even one check cost effectively. That's where digital came in. And as you can imagine, we have to come up with a process for that. So first we printed background on offset printing in color. And then we needed to make sure that when you take that pre-printed stock and you run it through a laser printer, the ink should not come off because it's a very different process. Laser printing, you're putting toner on it and it's going through high temperature and high pressure to put the toner to stick with the paper. So that was one challenge. The other one was, now if you think about variable printing, you're not using mechanical machines anymore, which meant that we needed for every order know what the starting check number is. And when it's going from one check to the other, the numbers had to go up. And in the US, there are different products where there's one check on the page. Sometimes there are, on business checks, there are 3 checks on the page, which meant that you had to go 1001, 1002, 1003 on a certain product. So as you can imagine, now we had to create PostScript files that had all the 1,000 pages. And then as you sent a large file to the printer, every page had to be different. And so in that case, we ended up writing, actually had finally got to use programming, which I learned in college, and that was my first programming project as well. So we wrote programs in C to produce PostScript, could produce 1,000 pages with all the numbers that had to change from one page to the other. So that was my first application using variable printing. And in that case, a variable part of the printing was the numbers. Check to the other. So it was interesting application out there. I know Michael is going to cover lots of other applications which are not related to checks, and looks like we're
I'm supposed to talk for 2 hours, so
okay.
Hopefully hold it for 2 hours. Okay.
Great. Looks like we're able to see the screen.
Put that into full screen. Yeah, I'll let you know when to advance the slide, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay, so before I start, a few things. I'm old. I also have a bit of a speech impediment, so when I get tired, that probably gets worse. So if I mangle anything, I'll try to speak concisely. If I use too much Western idiom or Canadianisms or whatever, just let me know, okay? That's fine. You either put something in the chat or let me know. I'm quite happy to back up and go over it again. Okay. All right. Yeah, what happened to the first slide?
Yeah. Just a minute.
Wendy, you going to put it up? Or?
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Okay. I believe you guys. There we go. Okay. Can you get, okay. Yeah, can you put that, can you get in that full screen? Okay, that's fine. Okay. All right, so my first slide, before I talk about the subject of variable data printing, I always like this quote. I like this quote a lot. It's the most famous quote from Abraham Lincoln that 90% of quotes on the internet are made up. And why I like this quote is because it's clearly Gödelian. If you look at Kurt Gödel, famous mathematician, and the incompleteness theorem, this thing actually proves its own truth by asserting its falsity. So that's actually Gödelian. And why I like that is if we look at things like consciousness studies, we look at Sir Roger Penrose, he thinks that statements like this. Humans understand it, computers don't, and this kind of separates the men from the boys and the girls from the women in terms of the difference between human consciousness and AI. So I think that's important. And I'm going to talk a little bit about consciousness theory a bit later on when I talk about accessibility. But anyway, next slide, please. Okay, I'm not going to talk too much about me, just to say that I had a complete career with the City of Toronto. I've been in this business over 45 years now. I do love it. I'm teaching at Ryerson to give something back. It's the most interesting field you could ever be in. You know, a lot of Ryerson graduates sort of get into pre-press or things like that, or packaging. I much prefer getting into transactional print in the CCM field. I think it's way more exciting, but that's just me. My background is not in commercial print. It's in transactional print, and it's in very heavy technical environments. So that I like to think I bring a little bit different perspective to the table. So some of the things I'm doing, I mentioned that I am coaching the Ryerson teams in the design contests, and often my job is they're very good at design, but I'm also good at technical. So I help bring some of the technical standards to the table. So we'll talk about that a bit later on. I'm wearing my Australian cowboy hat here. You will find in this VDP business that you're going to wear a lot of hats, and I'm going to talk about that right at the end on some of the roles, skills, and certifications you may want to look for. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, to talk about the opportunity of variable data print, the reality of our business, and this is true of both commercial printing and what we call transactional CCM printing. The new reality is all short-run printing, all short-run color is now done digital. It's not done in offset, okay? High-speed roll-fed cut sheet inkjet systems can do everything. They can do full color bleeding, high-speed composition. They can do it in great quality. They can do it on any kind of media. So the reality of our business, of our print business, is all the low-end printing, high-speed is variable data, and it's done digitally, okay? So since every impression that you produce can be programmed and can be completely different, you want to know, how can I leverage that opportunity? And it brings an amazing opportunity. Okay, next slide, please. Now, this is from Dr. Sharma's course at Ryerson. So I've just kind of borrowed this. Here he's talking about versioning versus personalization in VDP, in variable data print. On the left, you'll see some versioning, which is sort of more of a commercial print thing. Somebody's actually printing a catalog in 2 languages. In Canada, English and French are the 2 official languages. So what you may want to do is take that same catalog, print it in one language in Montreal, and print it in a different language in, say, Vancouver or Calgary. So versioning becomes very important on the commercial side. The other example here is you're printing, say, membership tags for a conference, so you can very quickly use the data to shift. You can say whether that person belongs to the media, whether they're a very important person, VIP, so on and so forth. Again, you're using the data that you know. It's a commercial piece, but you're using your data knowledge to make that piece variable. That's called versioning. Excuse me. On the right side, this is more of a transactional data kind of thing you're doing. You're doing personalization. You're taking the data that you're getting, you're tailoring it to that person. A couple of pieces here, you're actually using the person's name and their information. This is perhaps an approach to go to a certain university. You're doing some things. This might actually be a little sexist. You made the guy's piece blue. You made the girl's piece pink. You know, maybe, you know, that's a little bit sexist. But anyway, that's, again, you're using some of that information to personalize the piece for that person. Next slide, please. Hopefully my voice holds up. Okay, so to categorize personalization a little bit, the top example here is more like a commercial print piece where you're just taking some information you know about a group, and you say, okay, out of this group of people, a lot of them are into cooking. So what you're doing is you may be doing a cooking. This is a cooking course piece. You may be doing this as an insert, which is slipping into something else. So when they get that mail or whatever piece and they open it up, there's suddenly this advertisement for this cooking course because you use their knowledge that this group of people were into cooking. So that's an example of you just very subtly slipping an extra piece into something you're producing for a client. Again, this is more on the commercial print side than on the transactional side. We get into explicit personalization. Again, this is more. This would be more on the transactional side, where you're actually creating that piece. You're using their information, stuff that you know about them, what things that they do, what kind of job they have, their income, their sex, whether they've got kids, they've got children. This is all information you can use to personalize a piece. So this is really important. Okay. So this is very explicit, targeted personalization. You're mining the data you have to create a very targeted piece. Getting beyond that, and this is where we sort of get into what we're doing in the design contest, is something called trans promo. We call it transactional promotional. Okay, in the transactional world, you're often producing bills, statements, invoices, so on and so forth. So what you want to try and do is fill in some of that empty space with targeted information. And this is really key. So, again, this business is getting very complicated. Okay. This business is getting a little bit more complicated now because not only are we doing it for print, we're also getting to multi-channel delivery where we're delivering pieces over mobile, web, email attachments, so on and so forth. People want customer experience where you want to start a little bit of a dialogue with your customer based on the piece. You want to get feedback on what you're doing. We're going to talk about accessibility. These pieces have to be accessible to people with handicaps. We're getting into AI. What AI does for us is you may send out 1 million pieces and it's so successful, you get 1 million responses back. And you say, well, how do I handle this flood of responses I got back? Again, this is where AI might come in. It'll help you sort those responses coming back from your piece into response piles so you can sort of get ahead of the curve so you can handle the flood of responses that your piece generated. So I can talk a little bit more about that later on in the lecture. Okay, next slide, please. And if I'm going too fast, let me know. Okay. Okay, to talk about VDP response rates, this is really interesting. You can do, the example here is a postcard. This might be something you do as a commercial printer, might be something you do transactional. You just send out a postcard looking for a response from your clients. Now, what's interesting is if you start to move from doing a piece in black and white to black and white with a little bit of VDP, targeted design it into color, and then full color of VDP, is the response rates increase incredibly. So you can see that, if you design a direct marketing campaign, for example, with a postcard, and you put full color with VDP, you put in something called a pearl. I'll talk about pearls in a minute. Your response rates can climb massively. Okay, you're putting some intelligence into the piece based on using the knowledge you have of your clients to really target and design those pieces. This is one of the examples where you went from this plain postcard, you went into full-blown VDP, full color, amazing, and your response rate went up by 500%. So I think this is pretty telling stuff on the power of variable data print. Next slide, please. Okay, before I go on, variable data print has some costs associated with it. So these are some of the trip-up points. Everybody thinks this is really great stuff. I've used my information, I've used my data, I've increased my response to my mail-out pieces by 500%. Okay, here's some trip-up points. Thing is, you need a lot of software. This is all very software database driven. So you're going to need tools. You're going to have to condition the data. You need to compose it. The tools listed here are sort of low-end composition tools. If you get into much higher end, say high-end, very high-end transactional, there's some very powerful tools, but these tools cost money. Maintaining databases. Okay, this is a challenge. You have to be able to maintain it. You have to maintain those databases. You have to have expertise. You need staff time. You need servers and storage. A lot of companies are getting the server and storage on the cloud now. They're parking their data on the cloud, but it's still a challenge. Even though you park your data on the cloud, you still have to be able to access it. You still have to be able to apply it to your application. If you do a lot of VDP, that'll increase your print shop handling costs. If you're doing things like inserts, so on and so forth, this will increase your costs in your print shop. If you're looking for a response where you're doing customer interaction, customer feedback, you need to build websites, you need to have tools on the website, you need to engineer those responses, and you need back office systems. You've got things coming back in your company, and your back office needs to be responsive. So these, again, are all hidden costs of doing good VDP. The big trip up that most people don't realize is the legal costs, okay? Suddenly using a ton of data, a lot of this data tends to be personal. It can be private. There are security issues. It can be, it could be financial sensitive information to your clients, not necessarily covered by privacy, but it could, information that gets out could burn your client. So you got to be very careful. Again, there's a big legal cost. We're going to talk about some of the legal costs with doing variable data. I mentioned NDAs. These would be non-disclosure agreements. SLAs are service level agreements. You sign agreements with your client. They want a service. You've got to provide it. And again, it may require a privacy review because maybe you're handling medical data. So you have to make sure that that data is well protected. I'm going to talk about some of the legislation that covers that. Anyway, so I put some red tape up there. So there's always red tape with VDP. It sounds great on the surface, but there's some cost and legal realities with good VDP. Okay, so we'll go on. Next slide. Okay, so talk a little bit more about TransPromo, aka client communication management. This is sort of the space that XPLOR really lives in, and this is where I came up in my field, doing more transactional printing than commercial printing. Again, with transactional printing, what you're doing is you're creating statements, bills, invoices, insurance policies, things that drive business. You want to get those out to your clients. So what do you want to do with TransPromo is take some of that white space and free space on your document and use that a little bit more effectively. So what you may want to do is, for example, this is a bank statement. You may have a good idea of what this person's income level is. Maybe this person is married. The couple have a pretty good income. Maybe they're financially secure. So what you do is you offer them a platinum credit card. Again, since you know this and you know what their income level is, you can then target them with an advanced credit card. So again, this would be making good use of the white space on the document. And again, you'll see in the intercollegiate design contest, often what happens with the teams is they get given a very plain Jane, very ordinary invoice, and they're asked to make it beautiful. So again, they want to use design principles plus things like TransPromo and really redesign these statements to be a lot more effective. So using VDP principles, you can make some of these documents really very effective. Like I like on this one here where they have a little bit of a billing block chart diagram. If you're doing, say, a gas or utility bill, maybe you want to show somebody's usage over time. So again, these are features you can add that make this document a way more useful to your customer. Again, you can use the data to make charts like this. You know what their usage is over a certain number of months, and you can make nice diagrams as well. One of the things I want to comment on here, they've got a barcode on this particular transactional document. Barcodes are very useful. I'm going to talk about their use in accessibility. They also can be used in things like householding. So what that means is companies like to save money on mailing, so they want to literally put multiple documents into the same mailing. So using something like a barcode, you can effectively sort documents together and avoid embarrassing putting two documents to different people in the same envelope. So again, this is an example of householding, and this is where you'll see the use of barcodes to prevent embarrassments like this, but save a little money on mailing costs. So again, barcodes are very useful. Next slide, please. Okay, this was a really interesting example that Dr. Sharma put out. He was selling his house. So what it is here is you've got a web-to-print portal. It takes your information on selling the house. You can upload the picture of the house you're selling, and this web-to-print portal gateway will actually crank out photographic pieces that you can then hand out to people as you're selling your house. So this is actually kind of a cool thing. So if you're doing, you're selling a house, you want to do a little real estate, you want to give stuff to your agent. So I thought that was a very cool example, okay, of using a web-to-print portal under VDP. Okay, to talk about Perls for a few minutes. What Perl means is a personal URL. So what you're doing is you're mailing out a piece or whatever. You're sending out a piece, and what you do is you put a response URL on it, so that client can then either click on it, select it, type it in. If they're on a mobile device, maybe what you do is you use something like a QR code, like a barcode, which has the URL encoded on it. They click on it, it goes to a nice website, they fill it in, they get a response. And what the key benefits of using something like this in variable data is you start this bi-directional conversation. So the client says, "Wow, I can get a response from this company, and they'll talk to me instantly." The benefit to the company is you're collecting data. The client may be typing some stuff in response. You can track the response. You can see how successful that your campaign. Maybe this is an advertising campaign. Maybe you've got a promotion going on, so on and so forth. They can get a discount at the supermarket, whatever, and this is a great way. So again, this is a great way to do this kind of program. It improves the customer experience. The customer does feel that they can get a response. We talk about this. Again, you want to make that bi-directional conversation be very effective. So I don't have a lot of slides on customer experience, but this is a key thing now in this day and age with the multiple channels delivery. Your clients want to be able to respond, find things out, get information. So it's not just a one-way communication. Your documents become this two-way conversation between you and the client base. And again, that's the power of using VDP. Next slide, please. Okay, before I go on, one of the things I did teach in my Ryerson lectures is we have to talk about the law, because VDP is very effective, but it can get into some issues which we need to talk about. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about some of the law involved around VDP. Okay, next slide, please. Now, this is from a Canadian perspective, but you will find that worldwide in places like Europe, the United States, the laws are very similar. If you're in India and you're providing service to Europe or North America, you need to be aware of some of these laws. Okay, one of the key ones that Canada came out with is anti-spam. Okay, it's really to protect citizens and business against unwanted, unsolicited material. The trouble with the power of VDP it's very easy to take a database and just mail it out to everybody without consequences and fill people's, mailboxes and in trays with endless stuff. And you have to be careful about this. So what it is, this is a legal framework. You got to make sure that the piece is wanted. Are you truthful about what you're saying? Did you clearly identify yourself? Did you give your clients an option to opt out? You can't, people need to be able to say, hey, I've got enough of this stuff. I'm really not interested in it. Can I please opt out? So you have to give people that option. Data should only be collected for the purpose it's intended for. This was a big thing. There was all kinds of very fake processes going on where people would offer free cruise trips to the Caribbean, so on and so forth, but they weren't really collecting the data for that. It was just collecting the data so they could spam them. So you have to make sure that the data you're collecting is for the purpose you intended. Data should be disposed of. Well, you can keep it for a reasonable time, but you have to be careful. There is a way to report it that you're getting spammed, and it's in Canada. It's enforced by 3 federal agencies, so there are some big fines. So you've got to be really careful with overuse of VDP targeting. It's really very effective, but that's why they have to bring in legislation. Next slide, please. Okay, again, this is a typical VDP mail-out house providing all these services. Direct mail marketing campaign. They've got all the services, but again, if you look at some of the fine print, you've got to be very careful. But it's very easy to slide into spam, so you have to be very, very careful. So anyway, next slide. Okay, before I go on, I'm going to talk a little bit about accessibility, and you can't get away from accessibility if you're doing variable data print. I've taught both at Ryerson. Here's the deal for me, and this is funny. I'm a Westerner, and you find in the West that, as opposed to the East, is the West kind of believes very much in materialism, and if you came along from the East and said, hey, you realize you've lived before and reincarnation, they would look at you like you're crazy. But what I found is interesting for me, the kind of turning point in my life is I almost died from complications from cancer surgery at Sunnybrook Health Sciences here. And I kind of went to that little bit of an epiphany where, or, moment of truth where, there's got to be more to this life and then existence than this. And my surgeon came to see me, and she was very upset because she'd never had a complication like mine. And I just come out of the ICU and the intensive care unit, and I gave her the pep talk. And I told her, I said, you're a wonderful doctor. Those lives you aren't saving, you're improving the quality of their lives, of their lives, and that's from the being level. So I kind of got into pretty heavily into consciousness theory with things like Dr. Hamroth's work on general anesthetics. I got into the MBT team with Tom Campbell. Their science is very good. The indications is that, and I believe this to be true, that all realities are digital, including the one we're in now. We do come here for a reason. We do come here for a purpose. I think some of the experiments that Tom is doing now at Cal Poly Pomona is going to show the digital reality of consciousness. I think this is very important science, but it's probably stuff in the East you already knew, but the West is taking a little time getting there. But what it means for me is, my belief is that since people do come to this place for a reason, people do come here with disabilities. So people will come here with amazing, varied, strange disabilities of variety, and it's really for the challenge. So my view is, if you're going to do anything accessibility, respect people for the challenge they've accepted and coming here, having a disability. It does make life a lot harder. When you design things, you should design them to be accessible. You should design them to be inclusive. You need to allow everybody in. Like, the idea is, don't leave anybody behind in humanity, okay? Whether they're blind, visually impaired, dyslexic, whatever. Respect them for the challenge they have taken on this life and help them. Okay, so that's where I come from in accessibility. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to talk about the AODA, which is the Ontario law that deals with disabilities. It came in many years ago, 2005. I guess the depressing part is this legislation is 15 years old. We've made some progress, but not as much as we'd hope. But accessibility is a hard thing to do. With something like the AODA, there are the obvious things like building ramps on buildings, putting sign language into courts, getting special ramps onto the trains, so on and so forth. That's kind of the easy thing to do. That's what we call the low-hanging fruit. Most people have done that. That's a good thing. But then there's the not-so-obvious stuff, and this would include things like designing electronic documents, redesigning documents, building websites that are accessible. This is a harder thing to do. And because it's a harder thing to do and it's seen as sometimes costly, it doesn't get done as well as it should. So yes, we've made progress in Ontario and in Canada and in Toronto, but we could do a little bit better. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about this. VDP documents created under the AODA, what you may want to do is provide tagging metadata so that you enable things like voice reading technology to work successfully. One of the standards that was developed was PDF UA, which is PDF Universal Access. Hasn't been such a great success, but I think if you look at things like the later versions of PDF now, I think you're going to see a lot more tagging and metadata support in PDF. So this is a good thing. This certainly helps with accessible document design. Okay, and I'll talk about that. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of math. When I was teaching this live, I'd have a whiteboard and a pen. But one of the things people do is people they it's a Western expression, but people kind of cop out on accessibility. What they do is they say, well, I've got some blind customers, so I'm not really going to change my technology. I'm just going to get somebody else to do it, and I'll just manually accommodate those few people, and I'll bear the cost. And that way, I don't really need to convert anything. Blah blah blah. And to me, it is a bit of a cop out. It's not taking responsibility. You notice I've got a napkin here. The old expression, back of the napkin calculation. What that means is just quickly coming up with numbers here. So what you want to do here is if you're paying an external company for a manual accommodation for accessibility, you may be paying $50 per accommodation. If you've got 1,000 customers that are blind, you're spending $5,000 every run to accommodate those customers. Maybe you're doing Braille or something very special, and that's okay. But then realize that if you're doing that 10 times a year, you're spending $50,000 on manual accommodations. So that's a real cost. And you could say, well, why don't I take that $50,000 that I'm spending on manual accommodations and actually redesign my application correctly to do proper accessibility? In other words, put it into my VDP software and do it right in the first place. And this is, to me, is a real annoying point because companies do manual accommodations. They cop out on their responsibility, and it's a false economy because if you look at what the money they spend on it, they're spending a fortune on manual accommodations, which would be better use put into designing the software correctly in the first place. Accessibility should be built into your technology on day one. It should be built in from first principles. You should be making your solutions accessible. Okay? Again, the principle is don't leave anybody behind. Make stuff universally accessible to all humanity. I think that's a very, very important message. Anyway, that's my rant on that one. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, if you're dealing with disabilities and documents, there are three main disabilities that are going to affect the use of documents, okay? Obviously, blindness is one we're familiar with. The visually impaired is a little bit more subtle. The strangest one is cognitive, okay? And we'll talk about that. An example of a cognitive disability would be a dyslexia, okay? So these three are very important, and these will affect how you want to design a document in a VDP. Next slide, please. Okay, dealing with blindness. Okay, I know from CNIB, which is the Canadian National Institute for the Blind here in Toronto. Their lab is actually up the street. I do take my students up there on a regular basis. It's amazing. There's 1.5 million Canadians that are blind, and there's 5.6 million that have some kind of eye disease or situation that impairs their vision. So that's kind of terrifying, because you think that Canada has 40 million people right now, okay? So there's a whole lot of people that are either blind or they can't see properly. So I go, wow, that's a real challenge, and how do you service those people? So there's a way to deal with blindness. You can get into Braille, Braille printing operations. Braille's been around. It's one of the first languages invented for the blind. Many turn of the century. It's been around for a long time. Other things you can get into are things like barcoding and metadata. I've got an example of a PDF 417 barcode. What you can do, again, is you can drop a barcode onto a document so that a blind person receives this in the mail. They know that the barcode is in the corner. They can use their cell phone or other device. They can quickly scan the barcode. Something like a PDF 417 is a two-dimensional standard. It has incredible error correction, data density, so on and so forth. You can basically take the entire contents of your document, stuff it in the barcode. You can serve it out to blind people. You'll see a lot of QR codes again. Cell phones are very effective at devices for accessing barcodes very quickly. So these are good solutions for blind people. So metadata, again, is something you want to put underneath so that you create tag solutions so that they can go into e-readers. Again, cell phones, e-readers, software, hardware. There's lots of good technology for Windows workstations, Macintoshes, so on and so forth, for reading documents out loud. So if you've tagged the document correctly, you can actually listen to it. One of our accessibility courses, we actually had all the students learning to listen. So it's a lot different when you have to design something and listen to it. So very good exercise. Okay, so there's a couple of discussions here I had in lecture. I'm not going to ask the panel the questions, but the reasons our numbers are growing here, especially in North America, with blind people, is two things: age-related, and North American diet's not very good. We get a lot of diabetes, other diseases, so on and so forth. So age, diabetes, so on and so forth are increasing the numbers in North America. This is a real problem.
Hey, Michael.
Yeah.
I was just wondering whether it'd be interesting to get feedback from the audience as well.
Okay.
But culturally, it's very, very different, and it's not like growing up in India.
Okay.
We used to see blind people who can see properly.
Okay.
But in the curriculum, it hasn't been a focus, and
okay.
Has that changed?
Okay.
Is this even part of what's the thinking in India compared to the big focus in North America? Any thoughts on that, Madhura? Is this being actively discussed in India as well?
Okay. Okay. So I'm just explaining how we're dealing with blind people. I'm putting it out there. This is how you can probably put it into your variable data solutions, and these are some effective, and I think, are relatively cheap ways to provide accessible services within variable data. Like, they sort of go hand in hand. Okay.
Yeah, Michael, I was just wanted to get quick reaction from Madhura as well, and see how does this compare to, if any, part of the.
Well, I will say you've probably got a lot of blind people in India, and this is the way you can reach them. And if the numbers are that big, they're also very good customers. Like if the idea is if you give them service, you know, they'll be your customers. It's not a bad thing, you know.
Yeah. No, again, I wanted to get quick feedback from Madhura. Just 1 second.
Yeah. Actually, such projects or I guess such initiatives are not much
Okay.
handled in a country like ours.
Okay.
Maybe there isn't sufficient financial backup to promote such activities. Maybe that could be one of the reasons. But in schools or in our program, we did take up projects on for printing on braille for school. For the blind.
Okay.
But it's in a very small, as I said, not in a very in the primitive stage, not having.
Well, I'm trying to teach you guys. The other
I think
is if you're providing.
Yeah, I guess
service,
that's a great great entry point for this subject.
If you're an Indian company providing service in Europe and in North America, you need to know the stuff. Okay.
Absolutely.
Right.
Because you will have to service the blind people in those countries. Okay. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's stuff to be aware of. But again, my view is you don't leave humanity behind. So there's some cheap ways you can get into accessibility that isn't going to break the bank and spend a lot of money, and you can actually help people and provide much better services. Again, if you've got 75 million blind people in India, they become good customers. It's
absolutely
it's just good business. Okay.
Yeah, we're hoping that somebody in this group gets inspired and decides to take the lead, because one thing that I've seen is growing up, we keep waiting for each other, that somebody else will take this on.
Yeah,
and that's just cultural, right? To take the lead.
Yes.
I did want to encourage everybody to ask any questions they might have as we going.
Yes, put them in the chat.
You can ask questions, or you can put it in chat.
Put it in the chat. I will listen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I tend to plow along. I'll go too fast. So.
I just wanted to. That's why I take a pause. That's why I wanted to pause and make sure that there are no, if there are any questions, it'd be great.
I probably, it's too much information too quickly. I understand, but it's an amazing field. So again, 45 years later, I'm still passionate about it. So I want to pass on that enthusiasm to everybody. I do love this field. Okay.
Right. So which is the print process? Are you working with the digital printing process for using the Braille script?
Yeah, it's during the last contest, we actually had all the Ryerson teams do Braille versions. So what we did is we formatted the way the CNIB Accessibility Lab wanted it. We took it up there and we actually did Braille versions. So that was the first time in the history of the contest. We actually had Braille versions of all the transactional documents, which was really amazing. But it's working with Braille is very tough, and that's what I was going to talk about in the presentation. It's probably better just to use Tag PDF, to be quite honest. And Tag PDF works fine with cell phones and web browsers and PCs. Did you want me to continue, Manish?
Yeah. I think you can go.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to cover.
If you have,
accessibility in a lot of depth, but I'm just putting it out there. Okay, I do teach accessibility at Ryerson, so if you get into variable data, you may want to consider accessibility as well. I'm not going to cover it in a lot of depth, so I'll kind of blip through it pretty fast. I'll speed through it relatively quickly. Okay, Manish, can you put up the last slide?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, just the two discussion points here is we know the numbers are increasing, especially around the world. Again, a lot of it's age related, a lot of it's things like diabetes, so on and so forth. This is causing eye degeneration. Braille's impractical because not only do you need a lot of technology to do it, is a lot of people that are blind don't understand Braille. they're newly blind, they may have had diabetes, they got to a certain age, Braille doesn't help them. They're more likely to benefit from tagged PDF that they can listen to on their phone or their PC. So Braille is very cool, but it's very impractical. So, and it tends to be like the equipment and the software tends to be expensive. Anyway, next slide, please. Okay. You're more likely to deal with visual impairment. If people think, oh, everybody's blind. Well, that's not true, okay? For every person that's blind, there's a lot more people that are visually impaired. Here's an interesting stat. 8% of European men are red-green colorblind, okay? What you want to do with visual impairment is you want to get into large text, typography, keep the design of documents simple, be aware of color contrast, okay? A lot of people that are visually impaired can't tell the difference between certain colors. So you might design something that looks fine, but it just looks like a mass blob to somebody with a visual impairment. So be very careful when selecting colors for text, images, and backgrounds. You need to make sure you've got the contrast so they stand out. One of the tools I've listed there is a contrast checker. So you can take a document and say, are my colors have sufficient contrast? The visually impaired can tell the background from the text. Okay, again, color blindness can be a factor in your design. The big joke in the West is everybody in Star Trek knows all the guys with the red shirts always got killed in the show. So that led to the red shirt. We now know why, because they're colorblind and they don't know that they're wearing a red shirt. So that's the big joke with Star Trek. You'll often hear from the show that people call red shirts. It's a very, very common joke. Okay, next slide. Okay, I'm just going to say a quick word about dyslexia. This is an interesting thing. 3 million people in Canada and Nadinia. Okay, that might be scary. So I put a little dyslexia on the writing there. But if it's 3 million in Canada, it's probably a very scary number in India. Again, this is the hardest disability to deal with. It's the way our brains are wired, the way our consciousness programs or processes what it's receiving. What you want to do with dyslexia is, again, you want to keep the design of documents simple, keep it not too busy so they can pick the information out of the background. You want to use something like a dyslexic fonts. There's an example here. The fonts, you'll notice that it's white and skinny and whatever and squat in different places, and that helps somebody with dyslexia with their recognition. Again, this is something you can do. You can offer this as an option. What you may want to do is give them a PDF that you can swap to a dyslexic font. So this is a very interesting thing. I'm not sure how well you deal with it, but this is a way of dealing with some of the cognitive disabilities. So it's an interesting alternative you can offer in your documents. Anyway, next slide. Okay, so good design guidelines. If you're designing electronic content that's intended for the web or mobile, or to use things like hypertext links, you can follow the WCAG 2.0 guidelines. Again, this is good text navigation to keep the navigation simple, keep it well structured, makes things you got hierarchy, index bookmarks, make sure you've got alt tags on images. You want to watch your fonts backgrounds for visual impairment. And what you really want to do is design it for someone to listen to. You can take a web page and you think it looks great, but if you listen to it, it's all over the place. So again, this is a really good test of your design, because if it doesn't sound good, it's probably not a good design, even though you think it looks good. If you listen to a design, it gives you a complete different picture on how good your web page or your mobile page is. So again, the WCAG standard is moving forward. I think it's a great guideline. It helps you with you're designing a variable data application for the web or for the mobile or whatever. Again, you probably want to follow WCAG 2.0 when designing these types of documents. Next slide, please. Now, if you're designing for a paper document or say an email attachment or like a common PDF, you want to probably follow something like the CNIB clear print text lines, clear print guidelines. I'm getting dyslexic on things I'm saying. Again, if you look at something like the American Blind Association or in Europe, they're going to have very similar guidelines. Again, what you want to do is when you design something, you want to watch your font families, weight, color, point size. You have to make sure you stay within a certain point size, because you get too tiny, people can't read it. Again, you want to watch things like leading, paragraph spacing, kerning. The more space you can get, the easier for somebody visually impaired to actually pick out the information in the background. Watch your margin and columns. Again, focus on clear design and simplicity. One of the things I find at Ryerson is the students are so good at design, they tend to overclutter the design. It's beautiful, it's got backgrounds, it's got textual backgrounds, it's got multiple colors, but the reality is if you give it to a visually impaired person, they can't read it at all. It's just bloody useless. So the thing about design is don't overkill it. And something like the clear text print guide is very helpful. You'll find one of the studies we did, one of my students was writing a thesis at Ryerson. She found out that good design helps everybody, whether you're dyslexic or visually impaired. It doesn't matter. If you put these good design principles into your documents, it helps all of humanity. It's just common sense. Again, the idea, you tend to over-design things, and then the idea is if you're doing business documents, it's better to keep it simple, stupid. You know, the KISS principle. You know, just keep it simple, functional, to the point. You can make things look beautiful, but don't overkill them. So this is a very good principle. One of the things I want to shout out here, CNIB has a program to donate used cell phones. Cell phones make great accessible devices. What happens in North America is with these programs is people have phone plans. They expire, the phone's paid for. They want to get the latest, iPhone or Android phone, and they stick the dead phone on the shelf. Well, if you turn it over to something like the CNIB, they can add software, they can re-engineer it. Cell phones are amazing accessible devices, especially for poor people. Scanning OCR, so on and so forth. It opens up a world of accessibility for blind and visually impaired people. So I recommend programs like this. How many cell phones are in the world now? There's probably billions of cell phones in the world now. A lot of them are sitting on shelves. It would be nice if we could get those to the poor folks, the poor people of the world for use for accessibility. So I think that's a fabulous program. Anyway, next slide, please.
Michael, one question. So
Sure.
audience may not know, what is CNIB?
Yeah, the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. Okay, it's the national organization here in Canada, very similar to the American Blind Association. I've got a question. What are the limitations for VDP? There are probably no limitations on VDP. Again, what you're going to run into things that's like legal and your imagination is the limit. You can spend a lot of money on VDP. I'll talk about some of the technology, and maybe we can circle back to this question.
I think, Michael, you just mentioned you can spend a lot of money on that.
Yeah.
So my view on that is the biggest limitation is use it when you really need variable data.
Yes.
Otherwise, the cost is going to be high.
Yes.
Because just on cost basis, if all you need is static print, every page needs to be the same, then of course offset and the other traditional printing processes are going to be a lot more cost effective. So I think that's the biggest limitation is cost is higher per page.
Yes.
But then we cannot look at just the cost. We have to look at what's the return on the investment.
Yes.
Because if it's a marketing campaign and that results into more revenue for the company, then it makes sense. And I'm sure, Michael, you're also going to cover the downsides that I've personally experienced is sometimes they're really nice looking variable print projects, and I get something in the mail, but guess what? The database was wrong. They for example,
Yes.
misspelled my last name.
Yes, and I'll talk a little about this as I get further along. How are we doing for time? We're okay? All right?
Yeah, we're doing. I think we're doing.
Okay.
Mother, are we okay with time? There's, should we keep
Yeah,
going?
it's okay. Yeah, we're going fine.
Okay.
Okay. Keep going. Yeah, you make a good point about some of the limitations on VDV, some of the triple points. Okay. So that's a little walkthrough through accessibility. You'll find that they go hand in hand. The last thing I'll talk about with the law is privacy. Again, because you're now into variable data, you're collecting data about your clients. Some of this information will be private, will be sensitive. Again, your job is, and this is Canadian law, but this is true anywhere in the world, in Europe, in United States, is once you've collected this private data, it's your job to protect it, especially if you're sending it to other providers, to other clients, so on and so forth. So the key thing is personal information can be anything. One of the things I throw out to your students, especially university, is like, okay, what do you think's personal? Would you like people to know what your marks are? You know, your grade point average? Would you like to know, would you like to advertise to everybody what your student loan situation is? Are you on any prescriptions? Have you visited school counselors? Often with students, we have to coach them. Like, you know, say, look, if you're having problems, please come see us. You're not the first student to struggle at university. So, you know, we've been there, done that. Please come see us. Failure is a great teacher, which I talk about in some of my course introductions. Do you want people to know what affiliations you belong to? What associations or even political parties? Everybody, these days, everybody thinks you're a terrorist because you might belong to a certain group. So again, personal information can be anything, especially if it can hurt you, or you don't want people to find out. So I put this out to students. Like it's surprising when information can be personal and needs to be protected. So this is why they came up in Canada with PIPEDA, which is very much a governing act, and you have to be so careful protecting this personal information. It can be very damaging. Again, it may not necessarily be like medical information. It could be anything that could damage a client if it was found out. So your job is to protect it. So things like PIPEDA give you a framework for protecting data. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the high-end transactional printing. Academy used to be the teaching arm of XPLOR. I don't think the Academy program exists anymore, but they came out with a very interesting model on ADF. What ADF means is automated document factory. So you're going to find this at very high-end transactional printings are using something like ADF. And just to quickly go through the model, there's a bunch of phases where you go through where you literally extract the data. Again, the data could be personal information from databases. It could be things you want to throw in like image information, so on and so forth. You want to put that into a composition step where you kind of put those two together. The next step would be manipulate, where you want to actually transform the data. We call, you may do some data transformations. And finally, you want to distribute the data. Again, I've got arrows here to show the multi-channel delivery, where you take that print and you either send it out, you may send it out to a print channel, print and mail. You may send it out to a web. You may send it out to a mobile application. You may send it out to things like archive. I've also got accessibility. What you need to realize is all these channels may have to be accessible. You may have clients that need that content in an accessible format. So this is very, very key in this day and age. It's not just a piece of paper anymore. You're making documents, they could go out in multiple different channels. People, because of the pandemic, we've got more into online solutions. So this is sort of driving a change in human communication. So this is a very complex high-end ADF model, but it's pretty well the model used by high-end transactional printers around the world. So I think this is a very good diagram. Next slide, please. Okay, again, I come from a very technical background, and I started, in things like mainframe and Unix systems and so on and so forth. So if you look at the type of VDP software out there, it's a whole minefield of technology you need to actually do VDP successfully. Everybody thinks you think you buy a high-end tool, it's turnkey, and off you go. What you mean by a turnkey solutions is you buy something off the shelf, you install it on your computer, you turn the key, and all this magic happens, and you don't have to do anything else. Well, my experience is no wrong. You do have to build integrations. It's not easy. So I'm going to get into, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. Two of the things I've highlighted here, compositional tools are really important. Again, if you're using something, Adobe Creative Suite, for example, this would be considered a compositional tool. I've got a line there, filter, edit, conditioning tools. These are very important because and Manish talked about this. One of the trip-ups of variable data is that the data may not be terribly clean, and people have to realize that you have to cleanse the data before you use it. You can make very expensive mistakes in variable data, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. We actually did a lab here at Ryerson. I'm going to talk about this this lab that we did at Ryerson. Again, there's a lot of overlaps in the types, and this list is not exhaustive. Again, don't expect any turnkey solutions. What you may have to do is learn some of these different tools. I talked to an insurance company at an XPLOR Global about 3 years ago, and they had bought about 20 different tools off the shelf, expecting each one to be a magical solution, and all they had was 20 different tools. None of them talked to each other, so they kept having this expectation that they could buy the next miracle VDP solution off the shelf, and that just doesn't happen in this industry. If you're a small, low-end shop, print shop, and you're not into multi-million-dollar ADF tools, automated document factory, you're going to have to probably go out and buy a number of tools and integrate them together. That's been my experience. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so talk about the landscape a little bit. Again, I kind of grew up in the high-end transactional print, so these tools tend to live at a high-end, mainframe, Unix, or Windows Server environment. That's where transactional CCM tends to live. Big software running on high-performance servers, very heavily automated, lights out. Heavy use of business rules and configuration tables. Again, used very much for transactional, transpromo, business-oriented work. So this is where all the invoices in the world came out. Maybe regularly schedule and run. One of my trick questions I had for my students is, to the nearest million, how many transactional prints or impressions does Blue Cross Blue Shield do worldwide? Blue Cross Blue Shield is the biggest health provider in the world, and that was my trick question to my students. Like, to the nearest million, how many variable data impressions do they do a month? The answer is 4 billion. Okay, so nobody's ever going to be able to guess that. The reason for that is Blue Cross Blue Shield do a lot of these. If for example you go on a school trip and you need insurance, I'll do a little pamphlet which you fill out and you get your insurance. So those they're continually printing those because legislation rules may change worldwide, different countries, different so on and so forth. So you have to use the variable data. Then they're continually printing these documents. Again, it's a very complex issue to provide insurance worldwide. So all these guys do is they've got massive banks of mainframes hooked up to incredible numbers of digital roll-fed presses, and all they're doing is they're cranking variable data documents, just in incredible numbers. 4 billion, I was told. So that's just amazing. So you can see the enterprise server level is very scary up there in variable data. At the lower end, you're more into commercial print, where you've got, the example I've got is Adobe InDesign, which you've got running on a Mac. I'm running on a Mac right now. I had to buy this Mac for Ryerson almost exclusively on Macintosh. And again, you use individual tools. So again, this is for small shops, hands-on, very graphical design. You want to go if you're going very heavily on personalization or customization, you want to use these kind of tools. And again, you want to use it. You're in a print shop. You want to use it for one-off marketing or custom or a very special job. Okay, it's not transactional. It's not something you repeat. Somebody walks into your print shop and says, "I need blah blah blah. Here's my database. Can you crank this run for my customer? You know, I'm going to give you the file. I'm going to send you the file." So again, this is at the workstation level. This would be more into commercial print shop work. Okay, so I would say classifying all the software in each slide is a university course alone. I'm not going to teach it here, but I just want to give you an idea of some of the different landscapes out there. Again, I want to give a shout out to Quadient. Quadient is probably one of the highest end solutions out there. They do sponsor the XPLOR Intercollegiate Design Contest with Scott Drager. It's amazing. It's incredible. So I just can't say enough about Quadient. It's probably the Cadillac of software solutions at the high end. So anyway, next slide, please. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about best practices in VDP. And this is just stuff I've learned over the years, okay? And this is for all VDP jobs of any size and complexity. Automate your processes as much as possible. Nothing substitutes for automation. Try not to be hands-on, you know, use your servers, use your software, you know, you automate the crap out of it, because again, you can make it reproducible. What you'll find is you'll invent a process, the next client comes in, you go, okay, I've got a process, I think that works, I'll just tweak it a bit, and off you go. Automation can save you a lot of effort, time, and money. I'm much in favor of automation, even at the low level, even in small shops, even in the small clients. Don't be afraid to automate. Use the power of your workstation or your low-end Unix server or whatever. Don't be afraid of a little scripting. What you find in this business, and what I found in over 45 years, is a lot of these tools may not fit together properly. It's a little bit what we'd call, say, a jigsaw puzzle, or you putting Lego bricks together. Everybody knows what a Lego brick is. So what you want to do is scripting is sort of glueware. You want to be an integrator, not a programmer. What you mean by integration is you want to take tools, put them together. One of the vice presidents of Xerox, Chris Connor, once told me, every tool is out there, which is true. Somebody's invented a tool in VDP that will do something. Go find it, integrate it together. What you'll find is by putting the pieces together, you can build very elegant, low-cost solutions to get a job done. So don't be afraid of learning a little scripting. Most of the workstations, Unix, mainframe systems all support scripting. You can do it, and it stood me in good stead over my career. I'll talk a little bit about that later on. Okay, use good tools. Again, I'm talking about tools. There's lots of good VDP tools out there. You can use tools to fill those holes in your composition system. That you can fill those holes that your composition system doesn't cover or handle. These are things like transforms. Okay, what you might discover in VDP is I can make great PDF, but my printer only takes PostScript. Well, guess what? You can use a tool like GoScript, and you can crank some pretty good PostScript for that printer, and suddenly your problem is solved. So again, don't be afraid of looking for little tools that do amazing things. I actually sign checks using a little tool out there, a $100 US tool. What it does is digitize signatures into scalable fonts. I put those scalable fonts under a secure Unix system, and suddenly I could put secure signatures on checks. So don't be surprised that some of the tools out there can solve yourselves a little bit of a problem. So just be flexible, and there's some great engines out there. Okay, I can't say this enough. Use strong encryption methods when sending or receiving data. Can't say this enough. You're going to have third parties. You're going to send data off site. You're going to send data to clients. You're going to receive data from clients. Use strong encryption. The methods out there, they're all good, but you've got to protect your data. You've got to protect it against hackers. When you can, use good, strong encryption methods. I teach things like SSH2 based integrations. You can also talk about PKI methods, so on and so forth. The whole university course and lecture just on strong encryption. I can't teach it here, but I do encourage it. Make sure that you protect your data with strong encryption whenever you're doing any kind of VDP integration. Next slide, please. Okay, data is very important. Again, with data, you want to keep it secure. You want to keep it safe. You want to make sure it's accurate. And we'll talk about it in a minute. You want to make sure that it's accessible to the right people. And that's, again, will be your, make sure you've got the right digital rights management in place. You've got the right security systems and the right people seeing it. Again, you want to make sure you have the right access and extraction tools. So you can pull the data very conveniently, get the data together, put that into your VDP application. Don't forget about replication and backup. How many crises we see in the newspaper and in the media about people losing data, or one of the big disasters was the hurricane that hit New Orleans. How many companies had actually replicated or backed up their data? So this is a real problem. So a lot of things I did, the city of Toronto was actually making sure what I did could be replicated to a hot site, so that if there was a disaster, I could get the hot site up in about 7 minutes. So again, this is a very key thing. If you're going to have data, a lot of companies, this is one of the reasons why companies are going to the cloud now, because they can park their data on the cloud and then somebody else can back it up on the cloud for them. So there's something to be said for cloud-based systems. Do you have the right structures? Again, do you design your databases correctly? Do you have the right information? This is key in the data. And another issue is, do you have the performance when you need it? Again, this is another reason people are going to the cloud, because something like Amazon Web Services, you can buy how much service you want, how big of pipelines, how many servers are backing your application. So this is a key method. What are standard encryption methods? That's a good question. Again, I could teach a whole lecture on things like PKI. There's a lot of good ones. RSA, DSA. What tends to happen in the industry? They'll use asymmetrical keys to protect symmetrical keys. If you look at something like an SSH2 conversation, you actually might exchange. What you do is exchange private public keys, and that sets up a conversation. That conversation is done with a symmetrical key, and it's almost like in one-time pad. I don't know if you understand the concept. So when that conversation is started, they'll just throw away the symmetrical keys. So again, we could teach whole lectures on this. So this is probably not the place for it, but I do recommend it. Okay, one of the things you need to learn is to be a security expert. If you're going to do variable data, I'm going to talk about it at the end. You need to be a security expert. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to quickly talk about data conditioning. Okay, what you're going to find in this business with variable data is putting the merged database together to run your VDP application. That's not an easy thing. Okay, what you're going to find is the data is going to be pulled from wildly disparate data sources from wildly different places, and this is a big challenge, because you'll find, those databases could be on different computers, different locations, could be different clients. So pulling together is not easy. Okay, now if you're pulling from multiple relational databases, be ready to either go find a really good database expert, or if you're in a small shop and you're the guy on the computers, you're it. Be ready to write some SQL code. Don't be afraid of learning to write some SQL. I've had to write my own data extracts from databases to pull the right fields from the right tables. So don't be afraid. Again, when I talk about don't be afraid of scripting, don't be afraid of being able to write a little SQL code. because you may have to do it in your career. Okay, what you might find from the data, the values are missing, wrong, or corrupted. The values you want to match on are named or formatted differently. Like I think from the example, somebody called it squash, somebody else called it racquetball. They're not exactly the same things, but it's a mismatch on the tables. Again, you may have to build an assembly process. You may have to build it yourself. You may have to sort each other database correctly. You have to perform a match merge, and you have to handle exceptions. One of the biggest things is handling exceptions, because databases, once you merge them, how much errors will come out, and you need to talk to your client, and this is where you get into things like service level agreements called SLAs. So you get an error, you go back to your client and say, how do you want me to handle this error? Do you want me to throw this thing out? Do you want me to correct it? VDP is a great way to make expensive mistakes, and I'll talk about that a bit later on, but you can automate a mistake. That's the trouble with automation. You can take 1 million addresses, automate it, and those 1 million addresses are wrong. You mail it out if you've just spent $1 million on an incorrect mailing. So you have to be very, very careful. Data conditioning in VDP is a tremendous challenge. Next slide, please. Okay, so the way we address it, I got together with Dr. Abhi Sharma at Ryerson, and we kind of put our heads together. And here's some of the ugly facts. Okay, in 2019, in North America alone, there was 1 billion undelivered mail pieces. In other words, people had created stuff, tried to mail it out, it got sent back because the information was correct. 1 billion pieces. If you're spending, let's say for sake of argument, you're spending $2 on producing that, you just dropped $2 billion, okay? So that's actually a terrifying number. So what we did, we kind of came up with a lab for our students, and it was kind of an introductory lab. But the problem with all VDP exercise at university level is everybody's getting perfect data. And we said, well, that's not the real world. In the real world, the data is not correct. There are subtle errors in it. So we came up with this little bit of lab, and all we did, we based it on around Excel. So it was a two-step exercise. One was writing good business rules to edit the data. So they learned to write Excel formulas and macros to apply to the data, so that they got the data a little bit cleaner. This would be things like correcting postal codes and addresses, getting rid of certain incorrect characters, so on and so forth. The second part of the exercise was a little bit more interesting, because they had to sort of do a data mining where they go through the data and ask their clients, do certain errors exist and how do they fix them? And again, just to tell you a little bit of an interesting story is in Canada, you can send a mail to Santa Claus, okay? Young children like to write to Santa Claus near Christmas time. And Santa Claus is actually a mail forwarding service to Ottawa for Canada Post. And a bunch of little old ladies answer the letters, and you get a reply from Santa Claus. And I actually said this at a presentation at XPLOR, and one of the women stuck her hands up in the audience, and she was from Canada Post, and she was actually one of the little old ladies that answered the letters to Santa Claus. So this actually is true. So if we actually put that on the exam, yeah.
I appreciate that in the US. My
Yes.
daughter is 10, and every year she's been writing letters, but no response from them.
Yeah. Okay, so we had that on the exam. Is Santa Claus real? And if you'd done, done the lectures and the labs correctly, you'd say yes, Santa Claus is real because he has his own postal code. Again, we got them to correct the postal code from ho 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 to H0H0H0, which is the Canadian postal code format. So Santa Claus does have a proper postal code, and you can write Santa Claus. So again, the idea, the best practice you want to draw from this is don't question your clients on data usage. If they've got Santa Claus in their database, it's probably there for a good reason, okay? So your job is really just make the data clean. Don't worry about what it's used for. So again, we wanted to get this class used to working with a client, asking questions about the data, and just improving the quality of the data. So this was a fun part of the exercise because most of these students had never actually worked with a client, phoning somebody up. So you know, Dr. Sharma and I acted like the client. So we would give, you know, strange answers back because sometimes the client wasn't very cooperative or grumpy or whatever, but they had to work a little bit to get the right answers out of the client. And it was actually a very good, I felt a really good real life exercise, because this is something you've got to do with your clients, is working with them to improve the data. Okay, again, with VDP with automation, you can make very expensive mistakes in a big hurry. So you have to be careful. So we thought this was a great exercise. We've done this for 3 years at Ryerson. Dr. Sharma's on sabbatical right now, but I'm hoping for next year we're going to do this again. So I'm hoping to actually grow this lab. I think it's the only lab of its kind, as I know, in North America, I believe, and I think it's pretty valuable to the industry. So we're trying to make graduates that know a little bit about cleansing data. So this is a way to reduce mistakes in VDP. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I found in my career regular expressions are amazing. What regular expressions are, it's known as a lexical grammar or a computer shorthand. It's a great way for editing and cleansing data in a big hurry. It's supported by most computer languages, utilities, and programs. I've got a list there: Java, Pro, PHP, Pascal, Python, Awk, Ruby, Java. I can go on and on. So all the computer languages out there, all the scripting languages support regular expressions. The little cartoon here is they're looking for a villain, a killer that's abducted somebody. They have to go through 200 million emails to find the hotel where he's holding the hostage. But fortunately, thanks to the power of regular expressions, the hero finds that in milliseconds in a search, and the killer is arrested, and you know, she's saved. It's anyway. So it's a little bit of a goofy cartoon, but the whole idea is something like a regular expression can really save your bacon in this industry. If you're editing and cleansing data, it's something I recommend learning. It will stand you in good stead over the career. If you're into scripting or computer languages, this is something to learn. Okay, next slide, please. Just a shout out, I found that Sed and Awk came out of the Unix world. They're probably 45, 50 years old now. Sed is a stream editor, and Awk is record-oriented editor. They're great tools. The GNU versions are available on every platform, including Windows. They're great. They're great at working with regular expressions. If you're into things like, especially working in Unix, you're into piping and redirection, it's great to drop these filters in. You can cleanse data in a big hurry. I do recommend them. Again, great for VDP. You don't necessarily have to work in the Unix world. Again, it's kind of funny, teaching at Ryerson, I get the professors say, oh, you can't teach Unix. And I said, well, hold up that iPhone, hold up that Mac OS, hold up that Android, and hold up that Windows. They said those 4 systems I mentioned are all Unix-based, okay? Windows 10 brought in Linux support. So every computer in the room is running Unix, okay? If you've got a phone right now, it's a Unix system, okay? So gasp, dare I teach people Unix, okay? Unix is dominating the world as a computer system. You know, this is the harsh truth. So dare I teach everybody a little bit of Unix. These are great tools. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to go through a couple of case studies. How are we doing? Okay, so just to illustrate how VDP works. Now, this was really interesting because I bought this. I mentioned Cadillac, so I bought a Cadillac as a retirement present. It was kind of very much a one-of-a-kind car. Here it is parked on, I think it's I-75 somewhere in West Virginia. It's a very rare car. It's a very rare model. The color was one time only. It's the rarest color ever put on a Cadillac. So I got this really cool letter in the mail from GM wanting to buy my car back. And if you look at the envelope here, it's got a little bit of a stamp on it. It's got, you know, it's handwritten to me. And I thought this is really cool. And the more I got into it, I realized this was actually a very, very interesting VDP application. Next slide, please. Okay. Okay, so what they've done is they'd use again, I find this VDP genius. They'd use a number of VDP techniques to try and buy my car back. Okay. They use a fake postage stamp. If you went back and looked at the envelope, this was invented by State Farm Insurance in the 1990s. State Farm would actually do VDP mailings out to everybody. Go to a post office, put a crooked real stamp on it, and get the post office to cancel the stamp with a real black ink stamp. And the reason for that is it makes that envelope look personal. Doesn't look machine created. Okay, it looks very personalized to that person. They used a fake photocopy approach. Now think about it. This is a modern GM dealer in North America. When was the last time you think they had a bad photocopier in the office? 25 years ago? So this isn't a bad photocopy. They used the real staff names to do this fake letter. They used a natural script writing font. That ballpoint scripting you think you see there on the below there, that's actually a font, okay? In the middle, there's a login Perl. I can go to it, I can sign on, and they got a get a generous quote on my car. They make it look like an afterthought. It's just kind of scribbled in accidentally. They make a very generous offer on my car that's well over the book value of the car. I go, and this is bloody genius, because this just looks like a memo, you know, accidentally written by one of the service managers, badly photocopied and stuffed in an envelope. It's sheer VDP genius. Okay, so the deep questions you want to ask yourself is, where did they get the VDP data from, and how did they combine it? So what they did is, this is GM. Okay, they knew they had manufacturing data. They knew that this was the rarest color and the rarest model they'd ever made. They knew it was a high quality car with high quality components. So they already had that. They knew the service history of this car. They knew that I took it in for regular maintenance. All the maintenance up to date. I oil changed it. It was all done at this GM dealership. So they had all that on hand. They had the personal information of the staff. They had the positions of the staff. They had the dealer address, and they had the logo of the dealer. If you look at the logo in the lower left-hand corner, that's the actual logo of this dealership. They had actuarial tables. They knew that this car had massive resale value. They also knew that the probability that if I traded this Cadillac in, that I would probably buy another Cadillac. So, you know, this is a car that's going to sell for $70,000, $80,000, $90,000. So they're going to sell me a new one, and they're going to take the old one and they're going to sell it at a very good price. So this is definitely a win-win for GM. But I thought this approach was just amazing, because it looks so spontaneous. It looks like an afterthought. It looks like a bad photocopy. But when you look at it, this is all done through VDP. This is just, in my mind, one of the best examples of using VDP data to get an outcome. Like, if I didn't know about VDP, maybe I would have sold my car back to them, okay? But I recognize that this is amazing. So I just wanted to share that example with you guys. So that's the power of VDP, okay? Next slide, please. Okay, another case study. This is some of the work I actually did for the City of Toronto. I'm going to talk a little bit about Toronto Court Services. Toronto Court Services runs the court system for Toronto. In a good year, it makes $250 million Canadian for the city, and that's probably about 200 million US, okay? That's a lot of money. And this is not ADF. This is not high-end print solution based. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this case study, some of the work I did. Next slide, please. Okay, so the challenge here is this: the province of Ontario, which is the higher body to Toronto, decided to offload the provincial courts onto all the municipalities. They'd done a study, and they said that courts would run 25 to 30% more efficiently if they downloaded it to the municipalities and the cities in the province. And that was a sneaky way of giving them a little bit more money. The problem with what the province was doing was completely mainframe based. It was very old. A PL1 IMS solution, what that means is very old mainframe application. The people that worked on it probably retired 25 years ago. It was stable, but nobody knew how to modify it. So they were just going to shove us all this data. Now, it had some scalability issues because the city of Toronto itself is 60% of all the volume of the provincial offenses in the province of Ontario. The other 49 cities are only 40% collectively. So the challenge to the city of Toronto is massive compared to the other municipalities. So we needed to come up with solutions that were automated and scalable and so on and so forth. So this was a big challenge that we took on. Next slide, please. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about mainframes. I think mainframes are amazing devices. I'm not going to cover this slide too much, but mainframes are probably the best servers in the world. Most of the technologies we use now in our business, in IT, variable data, digital print were invented on mainframes. But mainframes tend to be like, the analogy I draw is they're like steam trains. Steam trains didn't go away because they were obsolete. Steam trains were the most sophisticated machines ever built by mankind. The only trouble with running a steam train, it took you about 20 years to learn how to drive it properly because it was fully analog. Okay, very tough thing to learn. I put up the big boy 4014. That's the most powerful steam locomotive ever built. UP actually put it back on the rails last year, 7,000 horsepower. So I draw that analogy. It's unfortunate we can't find people to work on mainframes, but they're amazing machines. Anyway, so next slide. Okay, so we had this IBM mainframe sitting at the province, and we needed to come up with a really fast way of getting it onto our Unix-based network and getting it out to our printers and other services. So what we did is, if you look at most IBM mainframes will run print systems. The one most of them will run is VPS, which is a TCP/IP network printer interface. So what we did is we went to LRS and we said, do you have a solution for Unix? And yes, they do. They have an openware solution called VPSX. So what we did is we butted them head to head so that the mainframe was talking to our AX IBM server using exactly the same language. So it uses the same ports, full handshaking. The nice thing about this solution is you can run it fills up the data link. It runs massively parallel. It fills up the data link up to the capacity. We had a very high-speed line to the province. You can do maximum traffic. So the court system in the Toronto court system could run 250 printers at the same time. And it doesn't blink an eye. Mainframes and Unix servers can run incredible blocks of data very quickly. So not a problem. The one thing VPSX did is gave us filter backend support to create new portals, devices, and archiving capability. What you can see here with the arrows is we're shoving prints out to network printers in the court offices. We're also shoving data out to other portals. These would be portals. One of our portals is called the Digital Audio Recording System. That's for scheduling courts. What we did, we went to fully automated courts so that we turn over court traffic very quickly by notifying the scheduler. The system will notify when your court date is up. You can get an email notification, you know when to go into court, when to show up, when to argue. You can now argue online. You can actually argue your course, but you don't even have to go to a court or a prosecutor. You can get your case decided online instantly now, which is pretty amazing. And it's thanks to those Windows Server portals. The other thing we do is archive. What we found is this system, the province, produced so much paper, but it was all useless. So what we did is we put it onto an online archiving system, and we turned that massive paper that was useless and had to be shredded, we turned it into a useful resource, and it's in an archive system. It's indexed, so you can walk into a court and say, what happened to my trial last week? We can pull it up and we can actually give you the docket and the result from the judge, whatever, and you can find out what happened with. So that all, again, that's in an archive. So again, using the system, we were able to very quickly automate documents over these solutions. Okay, so as a best practice in VDP, the learning from this is sometimes the best way to handle a document is to simply print it from one system to the next. As far as the mainframe is concerned, it's just printing a document. We're not changing anything on the mainframe. It thinks it's cranking out a notice of trial or early resolution or docket. It doesn't care. It just thinks it's cranking it to a device. What happens is when it gets to the Unix system, then the Unix system is intelligently redirecting it to the proper device. It could be a printer, it could be a portal, it could be an archive. We let the Unix system do the determination. We don't touch a line of code on the mainframe. And this is good because the mainframe system ain't broke. There's nobody to fix it. All right. Again, the programmers that worked on it probably retired 25, 30 years ago. It's stable and it works. We're not going to touch it. So this is a very good lesson to learn in VDP. Again, you repurpose the data. We just let the mainframe print away. Okay. Don't have to re-engineer anything. We're using the mainframe to its best capability. Next slide, please. Okay, just to talk a little bit about the second part of the solution, we came up with an engine. What we wanted to do is the mainframe was producing something called PCL5, which is an old print data stream for HP printers. It still works on most, if you buy a network printer or an office printer or whatever, most of them will still support PCL5, but you'll find a lot of the newer printers are getting into PCL6. A lot of printers will run PostScript, so on and so forth. So running in PCL5 is not the greatest thing now. You know, this protocol will eventually become obsolete. So what we wanted to do was get out of the PCL5 world with documents and get into the PDF world. Now the trick to that is there's a really good engine out there called PDFlib. I think it's probably one of the best PDF libraries in the world. I've actually talked to the president of the company, Thomas Muritz, PhD, at one of the XPLOR conferences. Very, very brilliant, bright man. It's a great tool for making PDF. What they do is they have something called data block support. So what we did is we stuck an XML parser on the front end, and we created a new engine called XML to PDF. And what it does, it takes XML data, and XML is all data. It takes a forms library of PDF templates, composes them together, and you get instant variable data composed PDF. And the advantage of this solution, there's a number of advantages. You can do this in real time. It's super high performance. People don't have to wait. If they walk up to a court counter, they need a notice of trial or some other type of document, the system cranks it out instantly. If it's done over the web, same thing. There's no delay, very high performance. One of the advantages of using a forms warehouse is you are always up to date. One of the problems with court documents is they change the legislation, and that tends to change formatting on your templates because these are official legal documents. So by using a forms warehouse approach, you can change a document to get compliant. We call this statutory or regulatory compliance. You can change a document instantly to conform with the new law. We got so good at this, there's a little plug-in solution for Adobe Acrobat, which turns any Adobe Acrobat into a design tool for PDFlib. And we had our clients literally changing a template in about 10 minutes and sticking it back in the forms warehouse. That's how easy it got. Instead of waiting weeks or months or recoding, 10 minutes, we're up to date. The Attorney General office from the province actually came down and wanted to know how we were doing this, and we explained it to them. So we were actually staying ahead of the province and keeping up with the changes in legislation. So this is an amazing solution. I do recommend it. Again, so two best practices I'll mention here for VDP. Use data conditioning to repurpose. In other words, you're repurposing that PCL5 data. So what we did, again, using our SED and OCK tools, We actually built filters parsers that would strip off all the PCL5 and would actually turn that in XML. We put XML tags in its place. It's ready to go. It can go into the composing engine. Another best practice, use external PDF templates. Use a forms warehouse. If you know, a lot of people hardwire into their application their document, which is stupid, because if you hardwire into the document, and again, somebody changes your legislation, now you've got to go in and change the application. Now you got to go find a programmer. Who was the guy that worked on that last? 5 years ago? Is there any documentation on that application? No? Okay, okay, now you're getting into a long, expensive change to change a document. Using external formatting with a forms warehouse is a brilliant idea, okay? It's going to save you a lot of money and hassle and headaches in how you design VDP applications. It's something I highly recommend. It was worthwhile building this engine for the city. It's still in use. It produces probably thousands of documents a day, and it's beautiful. It's a PDF. Again, because it's PDF, we can use graphics, typographical features. It looks nice. It's elegant. We've added all kinds of tagging. You can get into, again, we talked about accessibility. You can get into tagging, metadata. You can create accessible PDFs. So you got a blind person or visually impaired, you can send them a tagged PDF instead. Not a problem. It's not a big deal. Again, and archiving. It's easy. You can create PDF, shove it in the archive. It's fully indexed. It's fully retrievable. So again, we think a very elegant solution. And this is an example of using VDP principles. Next slide, please. Okay, so it's just some of my final slides. The business of VDP, you know, I talk about wearing many hats, certifications and skills. When you can in this career, and if you do get it, and it's a very rewarding and deep career, pick up as many professional certifications and skills that relate to the business of VDP, all right? I know in North America, I was at the city of Toronto, it would pay 50% of my cost. I went, got a whole bunch of certifications, and I went to university and they paid 50%, which is very cool. Again, you'll wear many hats in this profession. Be ready, you gotta be a lawyer, you need to be a project manager, you need to be a security expert, you need to be a designer, and you might even need to be a psychologist. Again, you're working with your clients. They're having some troubles and some issues. You know, you're working with the data. One of my jobs was maybe I had to help them through troubles, but it's a very interesting, rewarding business. But be aware that you need to know a bunch of things if you're going to get into it. I do recommend taking legal courses. 2 of the courses I took at Ryerson, which I don't regret, was computers and the law. I also took business and the law. Just basic things about contracts, intellectual property, freedom of information, and so on and so forth. It stands you in good stead. I do recommend it to Ryerson grads. We do have a law school now at the university, so if you can pick up a couple of law courses, really great idea in your career. You won't regret it. It will stand you in good stead. Okay, some useful certifications. Obviously, I will recommend the XPLOR certifications. We have the EDA, the document associate, I'm a document professional 4 times now. We have a master EDP, which is sort of a PhD level. I'm going to try and write that next year. Get into project management certifications. There's a bunch of them. One I recommend is information privacy professional, which is a program so you learn about privacy and access issues, sensitive data. Content management. One of the previous speakers talked about some of the security certifications you can get into. Again, there's some really good ones. One that was mentioned was PCI, which is dealing with credit card information. Again, these certifications don't hurt your resume. You know, when I talk about curriculum vitae or resume, they do not hurt it. So the more things you can learn, I've tried to learn things as I go over the last 45 years, and they're all useful. It's an amazing field. Okay, Next slide. Okay, just want to say thank you. If you have any questions about anything, whether it's client communication managed, VDP, XPLOR, you talk about the contest, please use my Ryerson address. I'll do my best to answer a question. If I don't have the answers, I'll find the right person that does. And the main thing is keep calm and change the text and background. That's VDP right there. Okay.
Thank you,
I
Michael.
think I covered a lot. That was
One of
basically
the most
4 lectures
comprehensive,
and 2 case studies
the
together.
most comprehensive fast cash course on VDP. Mother, if it's okay, take a couple of minutes to try and see if I can simplify and summarize, and then I'd love to share one example as well, real world example. I recently had to deal with.
If you get into the design contest, you're going to learn a lot of this stuff, and it's an amazing field. I again, I haven't got tired of it in 45 years, and that's why I'm back teaching it.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So while I was just listening to you, Michael, I thought
Okay.
the major points that I captured might be helpful
Okay.
for the students. As I was thinking through it, I was thinking like, why do we even use variable print, right? What's the objective? And I think there are two major areas. One is when you think about transactional print, what you're trying to do is provide data that is specific to the recipient. So under that, obviously, there's an electricity bill and anything related to a bank statement. Is you cannot print one bank statement and send it out to 100 people, right? Obviously. So it's the transactional documents. And then the other side is on the marketing side. What you're trying to do is personalize the message. So when you print a brochure for your business and you print 5,000 copies, you mail it, everybody's getting the same thing, which is okay if that's your business objective. But then when you start to personalize it, there are lots of studies out there that if I get a marketing brochure and it has my name on it, it's specific to me, it's specific to my habit. Like the example that Michael shared when it was about his car, it was his car's picture, it starts to become a lot more personalized and relevant to that person. So I think anytime anybody gets involved in variable print, it's important to understand what the business objective is. Why are we even doing it? Which is the bold line that they have. Because after actually setting up anything variable print, it's important to measure the impact of that document as well. So why did we set out to do it? And at the end, did we get the results? I quickly wanted to go to what I heard. One is, in order to do variable print, you have to have data. You have to have good data that is applicable. I think everybody in India in the news, I'm sure, is watching the news about China hacking into the system, and one of the biggest industrialists and business people, their accounts were hacked. So data security is a big problem. And if anybody gets into variable data print, it's our responsibility to make sure that the data of the customers is secure. That's extremely important. I think when it comes to design, which is the next step, you got data, now you got to design the brochure or a letter. The branding comes into play. Michael talked about how it should be as simple as possible. Using whatever your company branding colors are, that's going to be important as well. Number 3 is business rules. And business rules are really personalization. And that's when somebody on the business side is trying to decide, okay, should I look at somebody's buying habits where, let's say somebody bought, I'm making this up, somebody bought a coffee machine, and now you want to send a mail out to them and show them how different flavors of coffee that they can buy. That's personalizing. But you have to create those business rules. Somebody in marketing will help decide what do you want to say in that. Number 4 is scripting, and which is really saying, okay, I've got the data, I've got the design, my business rules are in place. Now I have to sit down and write the script, which is combining the data with the design to create a document that can be printed. So that's logic. And finally, you print it, whether it's black and white or color. Obviously, for variable print, you cannot use offset, gravure, flexography. It has to be digital. And then last but not the least, you can print a really nice looking document, but if your address is wrong, guess what? It's useless. So that's a big area that I had to deal with many years ago, which in the US, it's called address validation process, where even if when you get a database of all the addresses that you have to send it to, there's software out there that helps you make sure there's no misspell, the pin code is correct of the city, and so on. So combining all this, you can create a document, variable print document that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, just one quick,
Right.
really, really awesome, interesting example I wanted to share was, here's a website that actually one of my customers, and this website is called takecareof.com. Take care of yourself. What it is it helps you take a quiz, and I'm not going to go through the whole quiz, but it's really interesting. When you take a quiz, it says, hi there, and it says, okay, what's your name? Right? I'll put my name here, saying nice to meet you. And what it's trying to find is, what kind of vitamins do vitamins, or in India we say vitamins, what kind of vitamins do you take? And do you really know much, about what kind of vitamins you should take? So anyway, you go through the whole process, and it's a 5-minute process, so we're not going to go through the whole thing, but it asks you lots of questions about your lifestyle, what's your age, have you taken vitamins in the past? I'll say yes. How many do you take on a daily basis? I take 4. I'm just making this up. Right? I go through the process. I'm just clicking without looking. How old are you? I'm going to say 16. I'm still young. Oh, they're saying no. Teenagers are not allowed. So how about 21? Do you live in the US? Yes. Oh, I live in California. So what it's trying to do is creating a personalized list of vitamins that I should take on a daily basis. Now it's asking for my email. I'm not going to sign up. So interesting process. Well, what they do is, once your order is in, they send you a dispenser with vitamins on it, and along with it, they send a really nice variable print document. And I happen to have this. It's a 39 pages booklet that they send to you. That's the first page, and it says, thank you for your order. And they talk about, it's actually my customer, Craig Albert. They talk about, hey, looks like you ordered B complex, and which is great. And then they talk about, so do you see it was the customer's name on the top? And it's that vitamin that particular customer needs and should take. It also is making suggestions about what else they should be taking. And they typically send out this dispenser, and if you can see, these are vitamins coming out of this packet, and even on that packet, they put your name on it, the customer's name on it when you get it. Not only that, just for the vitamins you got, they'll tell you what's in the vitamins and how it's a healthy thing to do. So it's one of the most sophisticated examples that I had to personally be part of, and we help them put this booklet together. So every order that goes out for those vitamins has that personalized booklet that goes in for each customer. So that's one example of real world application. And as I shared, I think data security is important, taking the data, design, and at the end, making sure that you know what you want to get as a business results out of this variable printing. In this case, the company wanted to really personalize the vitamins so that once you start taking those vitamins, They don't want you to go to store and buy it, and stick with them. And they were able to measure the impact of having this variable data booklet on their business. So that was just one example I wanted to share.
Yeah, I think that was very interesting. Thank you, Michael. I think Michael started off with the easy part of trying to help students know what is variable data printing and what are the basic categories. A little technical part was difficult to understand. The reason is that we've never gone to so much extent or so much depth of variable data printing. But I guess we can take up this for those who would be interested in pursuing this topic in detail. So probably, I think there should be courses, especially to assist variable data printing, which deal about legal aspects, or they deal about some business ethics, or there could be something. No, designing and printing is something which we cover in our curriculum. A little bit of coding for variable data printing also is covered. But if somebody wants to really then there are certain things which we have to also work out along with the main part of printing and designing and variable, whatever the code for the variable data. But I think I know it was a little heavier for the students, but it was fine. It had to be started off somewhere. And I thank you, Michael, for this. And Dr. Abhay Sharma, who he was mentioning, the students are a little bit acquainted with Dr. Sharma because he's an author of two books of color management, and which the students refer to. So thank you for bringing in Dr. Sharma. Padmaja is online, our faculty member, so she would like to say something and then conclude. Yeah, Padmaja.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So, the morning, I mean, today's session has really, rather, the morning has started on a right note. So, it was an exclusive session, I would say, for understanding all the spectrum of VDP. Manish Kapoor has already, thanks to Manish, you have already summarized the details which are covered by Professor Michael Sutton. So I'm very much thankful to Professor for, for giving that crash course on VDP to all of us, because he really covered everything, right from the features up to the certification. And I would just like to mention or add one thing which he was like a little bit focusing on about the braille printing project. So yes, in our institute we have tried for 3-4 years. I was trying on tactile printing project, wherein we used screen printing technology for producing the dots in the braille lipi and braille script, and along with the graphics. So this we were doing, and we were following the guidelines of bana, that is Braille Association of North America, for the distance between the dots and all the technical details. So yes, but as ma'am mentioned that India is in infancy for all these these kind of the technologies. On packaging, the government has issued guidelines, or like rules are there, that on package there has to be a braille printed text for understanding purpose of the visually impaired or braille blind people. But then it is still there on the paper. The rules are more on the paper, I would say. Thank you, Professor Michael, for giving the insight of that part also. So it was really a fulfilling kind of the session, and many of the stalwarts or many of the industry people have also joined. Maybe they were there for the while. Mr. Prashant Atre was there, Mr. Tirtharaj Joshi, Vijay Patharkar sir from Build. So I could see many of them. So once again, thanks a lot, and we look forward to have a good association with you in future as well. So thanks a lot, and I think we are ending the session, ma'am, now.
Thank you.
Yes,
you.
yeah.
Yes, yes.
So, Manish, we'll conclude.
Yes, just want to say thank you, Michael. I know it's pretty late again for you. Really, really appreciate you taking the time for sharing with us. And thanks to everybody, all the attendees as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
please send me email if you want to know anything. That was about 4 lectures jammed together, so we covered the entire Ryerson curriculum in one go.
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
it's definitely a crash
But we
course.
surely
Yes.
work out on that and make sure that we have more such courses designed because it seems interesting. It looks interesting, and maybe
We can,
the few
yeah, we can
ones
take one part and go in more
at a
details.
time. Yeah, one
Yes.
part at a time, and we'll go into it. Correct. So thank you everybody for
Thank you
joining
all.
today morning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manish. Bye.
See you
Yeah.
next week.
Yeah. See you next week.
Yes. Thank you. Bye.
Students, please fill the feedback form which has been posted in your chat box. Okay, good.